Welcome to Aspire, and I Have the Right To podcast, where we amplify voices, share stories, and drive change in the fight against sexual assault. We explore the critical issues surrounding student safety, institutional accountability, and survivor empowerment. In every episode, our goal is to provide insightful conversations with survivors, experts, educators, and advocates, giving you, our listener, valuable information, resources, and actionable steps to create safer environments and cultivate a culture of respect and consent. Welcome back to Aspire by I Have the Right To. I'm Katie Shipp, Executive Director.
And I'm Chessy Prout, co-founder of I Have the Right To. We're so glad you're here with us for another conversation about courage, healing, and change.
This summer, we've been so inspired by the work of our student interns.
They've created an Aspire Club guide for high school and college students, designed new workshops, hosted fundraising events, written blogs, and built advocacy campaigns on social media. Truly, they've been doing it all.
And that energy really got us thinking, how can we make sure student voices are included in every part of what we do?
That's why, going forward, we've made a commitment to aim to have a student co-host with us on every single episode of this podcast.
Just as you hear from Gabriel and Hugh on the Real Men, Real Conversations track, we'll be bringing student voices into the advocacy and action track as well.
Because their voices matter, their perspectives, their questions, and the ways they're leading change on their campuses are things we all need to hear about.
Exactly. Students are living this reality every day, and giving them this platform feels not only right, but necessary.
So today, we're thrilled to be joined by our student co-host, Meghan Boudreau. Meghan is an intern with I Have the Right To, a recent graduate of Allegheny College, and she's about to begin her master's in social work at NYU. Meghan, we're so excited you're here with us.
Thank you guys so much. I'm honored to be a part of this conversation.
And we are also deeply honored to be joined by Jess Michaels. Jess is a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein, a powerful advocate, and the founder of the With You Too app. Her TED Talk, How Sexual Assault First Aid Revolutionizes Prevention, is a must-watch, and her work is pushing the conversation forward in such an important way.
Jess, thank you for your courage, your voice, and your leadership. We're so grateful you're here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So thank you again for being here and your willingness to share your story with us. We know you've been quite busy, and we're grateful that you've taken the time to chat with us. So to begin with, would you feel comfortable telling us a little bit about your journey, what it's been like moving from survivor to advocate to now innovator in this space?
Thank you so much for having me. I think words are really important, so I love the way you phrased that question. I do want to add that it took me a while to even see myself as a victim of this situation. So there was a time before I was survivor that I had to admit that I had been harmed. And recognizing that was a really important step in my growth. It took me a long time to accept that label of even survivor because I didn't feel like I was surviving for a long time. It took me years of trauma therapy. And then going on to advocate was something else. But I want to start back at my journey. Like what happened? What happened in the first place? I was a thriving and successful professional dancer and model and actress and singer in New York City. I was traveling all over the world when I was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein by my roommate and friend. I met him twice. It was for a job interview, and the second time I met him was at his penthouse, and he raped me that day. And what is most significant about me telling my story is I never believed I would be that person that wouldn't know how to take care of myself. I believed I was the type of person that would know exactly what to do if I were ever in a threatening situation. I believed I would scream. I believed I could throat kick someone because I was a professional dancer. I believe I would whip out ninja moves that I had seen in movies, no problem. And that's not what happened. I froze. And because I froze in that moment, I lost a huge sense of identity. Became extremely fearful when I had been someone that was extremely confident and assertive. It changed how I saw myself. It destroyed my self-esteem. It destroyed my ability to believe that I could take care of myself safely in the world, which left me with a severe amount of anxiety, insomnia, and inner turmoil that in the long term affected my physical health. So that's what I talk about. That's what I speak about. That's what my advocacy is about, is that I froze and that I have lived with post-traumatic stress disorder for 30 years. It took about 7 years of trauma therapy for me to even get to the point where I believed I am a survivor, to then be willing to share my story as an advocate, because I recognize that, well, if I froze, a lot of other people did as well. And I would come to learn that that was actually a really common response, a very, very natural and normal response. And that I also wasn't the only one living with the physical repercussions of post-traumatic stress disorder, that sexual assault survivors actually have higher rates of post-traumatic stress disorder than almost any other tragedy or trauma. And a lot of that is due to the isolation. So those are key points of my advocacy. And then that made me want to do something besides just talking about what happened. I wanted to create something that would change that, change how we perceived, how we respond in the moment, and how others respond to us, so that we can get to healing faster.
Oh my gosh, everything that you just said is so powerful. And there are so many different questions I have for you just from that one piece. But I do want to emphasize or re-emphasize what you said about language being so important. And for me in my journey towards healing, learning about the term freezing, and that freezing was a valid response to a sexual assault. Learning that in the first place alleviated so much shame and blame that I had carried on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, could you share with us where you learned that term for the first time? Because I think, or I have a feeling that that might have been a super pivotal point in your healing journey.
It was. I really didn't understand it at first, and I had some advocates that I had talked to as I was on my healing journey. At one point, someone explained to me that flight wasn't just running away, that it was your ability to make a decision in your brain, like shutting down and you dissociating. I learned that. And then I learned freeze was normal. What I couldn't grasp, and what was the hardest thing for me to grasp, and it took several sessions of therapy for my therapist to express to me that I didn't choose it, that it wasn't an intellectual choice, that it was actually an involuntary automatic response that my body chose. And it wasn't until she explained to me, Jessica, it's like when your hand hits a hot stove, and you don't have to think about it for your hand to pop off that stove. It just does. And it's part of that defensive system. And it was only when she'd explained that to me, and it took several weeks, months of me trying to grasp how something could happen in my body that I didn't understand. But it was getting that really simple explanation of what was happening. And that was another moment where I realized why words are so important. How we describe something is so important, and why my mission to give myself my words back, give myself that understanding in words, so that I could then pass those words on, so that it would be understandable to others that maybe went through the same thing. So, personally, I'm so sorry that you froze, Chessy, because unfortunately, that is what happens all the time. That it happens all the time. And I've had some comfort in my social media comments from military that said, you know what? Trained soldiers freeze. Police officers freeze. And you shouldn't feel ashamed or embarrassed of that. It has nothing to do with choice. It's just what happens in our body.
Wow. That I've never been told that or heard that before. And that makes me feel, as a survivor who froze, as a human being who
Yeah.
froze in a traumatic situation. We're all faced with traumatic situations of varying degrees throughout our lives. And to know that freezing is a valid response, and that it's not your fault, and that it is something that your body does to protect yourself,
Exactly.
is so validating. And And hearing that from you is just so powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you. It definitely was life-changing for me as well. So I'm glad it's helpful.
Yeah, Jess, thank you so much for sharing. And it's extremely powerful. And as someone who also has a freeze response, just really affirming in a weird way to be able to have that solidarity with one another. And just your journey and hearing about it and how you have reclaimed a lot of your story. We know that you have an app in the working with the hashtag with you too app. Would you care to share some more about that and how you kind of changed your story and was able to reclaim that part of you through the app?
Yes, I would love to talk about that. And I want to add one more thing because we are talking about the freeze trauma response. And there was a conversation that I had with my therapist that I think is really important, and I want to share here to everybody listening. At one point, because I was really getting back into my power and understanding of what happened, I couldn't let it go from my therapist. I kept saying to her, but why did I freeze? Like, but me, like, what in me caused me to freeze? And she just said, Jessica, it's because you have a really good brain. You have a really good brain, and it protected you. And it was a beautiful moment for me that I needed. I needed to know that it was not because I was a failure in some way. I was flawed. So I just wanted to share that. So let me tell you all about the Wits You Two app. Because it is my passion project, and it is what has been developed over time of it's taken a long time to get here. It's been years of figuring out what that gap was. What is the actual gap between how survivors actually get support, how survivors are heard, whether they're heard or not heard, and whether they actually get any kind of justice. And it started off, interestingly, when I was watching the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. And about 2 weeks in, the prosecution rested. And it was a case that was supposed to go on, I thought, for months. And so when the prosecution rested, I had this moment of thinking, oh my gosh, she's gonna get off. She's gonna there's gonna be no justice. And I was furious. And I remember thinking, after Sandy Hook Elementary School, we have active shooter drills in every school in our country. And yet our children are more likely to experience sexual assault than ever be in a school shooting, an active school shooting, and even at the rates that we're at now. And we have nothing, no stop, drop, and roll, no preparation, no pre-crisis protocol, no safety plan that is societally agreed upon for this issue. And that's where it started. This idea that no one knows what to do until after it happens, when we're all supporters and victims sitting there traumatized, which is not the best time for us to be navigating a crisis situation. And so that's where it started. It started out with just trying to figure out, how do we help people know what to do in that moment? And in fact, that's our tagline, know what to do when someone says me too. But how it evolved, which was really fascinating, and Meghan and Chessy, you can comment on this part too. What I found learning about Gen Z was that it wasn't just in a crisis that you guys needed to know what to do. What was actually helpful is if you knew how to help and support each other in a non-crisis situation, so you could learn who to trust and who was safe in a crisis. And that was important. That was an important learning, because what we did learn through the research was that when a trauma survivor is surrounded in safety, trust, and support within the first 24 to 72 hours after an event by people they know, not just by strangers, not going to a crisis center, not going to a police station, but by the people that they know and love and trust, and then those people stay with them for the next at least 90 days, we minimize the percentage of post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms in that person. And so if we could teach people how to connect better on an everyday basis and be there for people on an everyday basis and learn to trust that connection, then then people could learn to be there in a crisis moment if they had the right tools.
I've chatted with you so much about this app, and I'm truly so excited for it to get rolled out because I think it's needed. I just spent a day with 100 student leaders at a university, and this is what we focused on was responding to survivors, how to respond in a trauma-informed way and how to support them. And we're going to be introducing the app to them, but it really is something that people want to know how to do. I think it's more a part of the public consciousness that this is happening, but people don't necessarily know how to respond. We did a survey with a group of students, hundreds of students at a high school out in the San Diego area, asking them, what do you want I have the right to cover? And I would say the most common response was, how do I support my friends? How do I support my community? And it's so important because I know in my cases, so many of my clients didn't have that. They had people questioning them. They had people interrogating them. They had people investigating them, or they had people who were maybe too afraid to say the wrong thing, so they said nothing at all. And it's so important to have this, right? To not, because everybody thinks of like, okay, what do we do for survivors? But it's really the community around survivors that needs to do the work, right?
Yes, yes. And do you know what is can I just tell you what is so amazing that I've learned about Gen Z, that I think is so beautiful? When I explain to them about how we could diminish post-traumatic stress disorder if we surround someone in that safety, trust, and support, I was speaking to a group at Temple, their eyes all lit up and they're like, tell us about that. We want to do that. We want to help people not develop post-traumatic stress disorder. And at first I was like, isn't that too scary? And they said, no. They said, we're the generation that went through COVID. We're the generation of active shooter drills. We know all about post-traumatic stress disorder. And so they were very excited about the fact that they were going to be the supporters, that they were going to be the ones that could be there for other people. And then the other thing that they were so amazing about, they were like, okay, we understand, find 3 or 4 people that are trusted people. But then they said, but what about the people that don't have an inner circle? There's so much thoughtfulness in Gen Z. I'm absolutely inspired by this younger generation.
I feel the same way. I just was having a conversation with a young person today, and she was going on and on about how the world just feels so dark and heavy. And I said, I get that. And like, it does feel dark and heavy. And when I was just litigating these cases day in and day out, it really felt dark and heavy. But it's the
Yeah.
young people like Megan, like
Yes.
the young woman I was speaking to today, that are just really giving me hope. Like when we go into schools, that I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? They're going to make it different. It's going to be different for them. And
Yeah.
in turn, it's going to be different for my kids. Like, I
Yeah.
really believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Chessy, you're such a heroine. They're just leading the way so much. So thank you for all you've already done for survivors and young people.
So many people that come in just because they hear your voice, Chessy. I mean, every single week we have people that say, Chessy saved my life. I listened to her book, Walking the Halls, when no one would listen to me. Um, it's that ripple effect we always talk about.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why being able to work with you, Jess, and the With You Too app is so important to us here at I Have the Right To, because we are all about building communities of respect, and we think that safety begins with respect. And, hearing you talk about building that sort of support for the trusted friends, which, I think everybody is a trusted friend and everybody deserves to have trusted friends. But it's true. Some kids, don't get that sort of guidance throughout their life. They aren't given the specific tools by a parent or maybe by a key episode of a TV show or Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, like of how to respond to instances that are just completely extraordinary and impossible to imagine at a young age. I'm thinking of like a handful of instances throughout my life and, that I've written about in my book that I had no idea how to respond to, dealing with, suicide in middle school in my community. And then the earthquake that killed, so many people in Japan. And then, with teenagers now growing up with the COVID epidemic or the pandemic, devastating communities and shutting down the communication that we have with each other. I don't think we talk enough about the impact that isolation had on all of us, not just kids, but I think everyone. And the With You Too app comes at such a perfect time, I think, in a post-pandemic world where we are relearning how to support each other and how to ask for help. I think that's one of the coolest parts of the app is there's, you can raise your hand and kind of say, I need help or I need support. Could you talk to us a little bit more about what sort of pieces of the app how did you decide to put the key pieces of the app in the app?
That's a great question. Thank you so much, Chessy. So I wanted something memorable. I wanted something like a stop, drop, and roll. I wanted something that was really simple to not only learn, but to execute. And so I came up with three things that seemed to create this Venn diagram of safety. I needed to know my people who was safe. I needed to trust that they were going to show up for me and not um, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, because there were people that were and people that I loved, but they said the wrong thing. They still said the wrong thing. People that I trusted and they didn't know what to say. And then I wanted to be able to have a plan. So it was people, a pact that people would be willing to learn if they didn't know the right thing to say. They'd be willing to educate themselves enough on how to be there for each other better. And then a plan. So if there's a crisis, we know exactly where to go if we need this plan. So the app centers around a feed that you have with just your 3 or 4 trusted people in your inner circle. Your pact is around just little micro gamified lessons, reminding you how to connect with each other, reminding you about mental health, reminding you about boundaries and consent, and all of the things that all of us have talked about the things we have a right to as individuals and within our inner circle and within the world. Because I think that that's a really important aspect is it's not just about other people, it's about me. Who am I to myself? What do I understand about myself so that I have the capacity to be there for other people? And I can identify when I don't, so I know when to be the person asking for help. But then how do I relate to that in the world? And how does that take me through the world? So it's those 3 main parts. And what I heard back from students that actually had the chance to go through the app and test the design is they loved that they could identify who their people were. They loved that there was an alert notification in there, a special alert, so that they didn't have to say any words. They didn't have to say anything, and it was understood in advance. Look, this alert is here so that you can reach out to your people whenever you need support, and you don't have to say anything. No details need to be shared, and the pact that these people have made is that they will be there for you regardless, like no questions asked. But they also loved that the plans were there and they didn't have to quite look at them yet, but they knew exactly where to go. And it was going to take them through a 90-day care plan. And we're not going to judge whether something has the legal definition of sexual harm. The only thing we're listening for is, were you hurt? Were you injured? Is it a physiological injury? Is it an emotional injury? We don't care. All we care about is whether you were harmed. And so the whole framing of the app is around that sexual assault is an injury that needs care before it's a crime that needs interrogation.
Oh, that's amazing. And, on the topic of building that community, but from a different lens, so many survivors find it so much more comforting and validating when they come forward with, people who have also experienced the same type of harm. And just anecdotally, I was thinking about, and I think about all the time, the 7 other girls who, in the last 10 years had come to me and said that my perpetrator had done the same thing to them. I was wondering, you've shared before how life-changing it was when you learned that you weren't the only one, when there were other people that were with you too, survivors of Epstein. And even if that took, years and years to find out, would you be able to share with us or illuminate what that realization was like, and how that impacted your healing?
Yeah. It changed my life, actually. I really had not understood the weight I had been carrying. I had really not understood the volume of pain around it that I was carrying and how much of my self-identity was wrapped in it. Not because I was seeing his face every day. I was not. That's not what was happening for me, but I carried the emotion, the helplessness of freezing in my life with me every single day, and the assumption that I was the only one. And so when I read that there were others, it was first triggering and upsetting, but at this exact same time, the polar opposite was happening. The sadness of this actually happened and I have to face it, mixed with I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one, and it wasn't my fault at the exact same time. And that is a very bizarre feeling because a portion of the weight is lifting off of my shoulders while I'm reading this article. And it was life-changing. I did not believe myself. I didn't believe myself that and so how could anybody else believe me? And how could anybody else believe this 22-year-old dancer compared to this Wall Street guy with a penthouse and a plane? Like they're just I once I figured out that no one is going to believe me, it's like I shut it down internally. Completely shut it down, shut it off. And in that moment, it was life-changing. Those first 4 women changed my life. I wouldn't be the person that I am today without them.
It's so interesting because, sexual assault is often described as like a robbing of the soul. It's like a soul crime. And, you spoke a little bit at the beginning of the episode about just your sense of self being just like dismantled or destroyed. And I really identified with that and have spent a lot of time in intensive therapy, different kinds of therapies to try to get back to who am I? Being able to hear from you how realizing you're not alone in this situation impacted your belief in yourself is really powerful because I struggle with the same thing, and I really hate the fact that my belief in myself depends on the validity of other people's experiences as well. I don't think it should be that way. I think, once is enough, and but I do at the same time hold the fact that it feels so infuriating, but also validating when you're not alone. And there's so much conversation going on about this specific perpetrator. And it's become such a globally captivating story on both sides of the political spectrum. Yes. What has that been like for you? to go through everyday life experiencing and knowing that this could be on the news app when you open your phone, on Google, on a newspaper you see or magazine walking down the street. Like that to me, I have experienced that on some scale, not at this scale. And even then it was just absolutely overwhelming.
Yeah, it's funny because it's not there's a separation for me between his name. I didn't even remember his name for sure. Um uh, but it was something about seeing his face. So seeing his face everywhere is really the part that uh can be activating. And isn't it funny how we doubt ourselves so much? I think before all the news came out, I didn't feel like I wanted to talk at all about him or the news or that political take on any of this. I just kind of avoided it. And then I started seeing everyone and their brother having a hot take about Jeffrey Epstein. And I thought, well, if they can have a hot take about Jeffrey Epstein, then I can certainly have a hot take about this very personal experience that I had. And in a sense, it felt empowering. At the same time, um, I hate that I see him everywhere, that I just see him everywhere, that when I wake up in the morning, my brain is still spinning thoughts with his name and his face in it, and Ghislaine Maxwell's name and her face. I hate that, um, that there's been the headlines and talking about it, we're talking about it because of the continuous repeated injustice over and over and over and over again, and that's just as bad as the actual headlines. It's this constant lack of accountability and justice, and admitting to any responsibility by our government, given what they knew, what we know that they knew. And so it ranges from I can't even pick up my phone to needing to know what's happening because maybe there's been a break in something, and hoping I can hear something that will give me the tiniest bit of hope. Um, so it's complex. And at the same time, Chessy, I'm so glad people are talking about it. It's this weird, like people are actually talking about it. Whereas 3 months ago, 4 months ago when I went to Temple, a lot of young people didn't even know who Jeffrey Epstein was. Because it was before they were in high school, right? Like they wouldn't have known. And now we're having a global conversation around it. So I'm kind of in, again, these really complex deep feelings of I hate it and I'm grateful, and maybe this time there will be some justice.
Well, I think it's so supremely admirable too of the way that you've used your platform in this instance to uplift the voices of other survivors and to make a real lasting difference in the world. And it's not necessary. And I know that, especially as women, sometimes we feel the need to come to the table with like a full laid out plan as to how we're going to, help everybody else while sharing our story. But at the same time, I'm just so grateful for the way that you've transformed this horrific plague in your life that's continuing on to something so powerful and helpful to so many.
I think every survivor is triggered by this. I think a lot of people relate, regardless of party. They relate to the fact that, no, this is clear. We were expecting justice. There are over 100,000 pieces of evidence. And one of the things I keep pointing to when I am invited to speak is if we can't get justice with 100,000 pieces of justice, 100,000 files, how is anyone going to get justice? And I think that survivors relate, women relate, you know, there isn't any demographic that doesn't relate to that except, wealthy white guys. Like that don't relate to, people of color relate, the LGBTQ community relate to that lack of justice. And so I feel like I'm not alone then when I'm speaking about it. And that's why it's actually easier. It's not just about me and my story. It's about all of us that are really struggling right now. And there are people that could be doing something about it on this very national stage, and they are not. They're choosing not to. And that is horrific.
I remember you and I had been chatting about the app and different ways we can collaborate, and then your TikTok went viral. And like every day you were getting different media inquiries, and I want to just take a moment to say to you how brave I think you are. If every news outlet started calling me tomorrow and asked for me to share my voice, I hope I would be as brave as you are. It takes such courage to be vulnerable in that way. I'm sure that it is completely exhausting, and you have just faced it. And I really think that you're really brave, and I'm really proud to know you. And you have kept reminding people about the survivors, about the real people that we're talking about. People want to look at things like it's a scandal, like it's a TV show.
Yep.
This isn't a scandal. This isn't, I mean, it is a scandal, but
These are
it's not a TV
humans.
show. It's not,
Yeah.
this is real. This isn't
Yeah.
pretend. It's not something for your entertainment.
Yeah.
And I think you've done such a good job at reminding people that, and reminding people that there are survivors here too.
Thank you. That's the goal. That's the goal. I don't know if I think people are listening to some degree. I think media needs a lot of training. But I'm also recognizing that how I'm speaking, I get to choose um, rather than wait for them to guide an interview. I get to choose how I respond, so I'm trying to learn on the fly as I'm going along of what I think is important for people to be listening to, or the questions they should be asking. And I've experienced an incredible amount of kindness and support. I think that's also the reason why I feel like this is why I need to speak up, because people are finally asking. They're actually asking. And I don't want to lose that opportunity to share what I've learned about healing, what I know about survivors, and what I know that we're all struggling with right now as Americans. And parents with children, grandparents, you know, aunts and uncles that know that the next generation needs something different. Because if we don't fix this, we cannot be sure that something like this isn't going to keep happening. I mean, it's likely still going on, and we haven't even stopped this first issue at all. At all.
You also shared the important reminder that, yes, sexual abuse that occurs to children is awful, but so is sexual abuse that occurs to adults, and adults have that same trauma response that kids
Yeah.
have, and
Yeah.
we need to be talking about all of that because, yes, he abused young girls, but he also abused young adult girls as well.
Yeah, I was
And just
22. I was 22. And why I really said that and why it was really bothering me was just to express that the trauma isn't less. It doesn't mean it's not more it's egregious if it happens at all. And it is particularly egregious when people take advantage of children, purposely take advantage. But the trauma isn't less. There isn't we don't magically cross 18 years old and suddenly we experience less trauma in life. There's also a really very bizarre thing that I have heard and listened to in the conversations around Epstein that puts more responsibility on someone when they cross that line when they turn 18. That there's more responsibility for that person, that they should not have been in there and they should have known better and they shouldn't have gone there. They shouldn't have, they should have known because he was Epstein, and I was like, it's 1991. He wasn't a thing. There wasn't a Jeffrey Epstein, a known Jeffrey Epstein predator then. So it felt important for me to remind people that there is at no time any responsibility for rape except a rapist. The main cause of rape is a rapist. Has nothing to do with what you wore, what you drank, where you went, how you walked, how you said something. Nothing. Zero, zero, zero responsibility on the part of the person being assaulted. I bear no response. I'm going to say this out loud to all of you and to everybody listening. I bear zero responsibility for being raped. Zero. Period.
For those who can't see us, we're all nodding.
Zero. Yep. Same, Chessy. Just so you know, like zero. Zero.
Jess, thank you so much again for all those affirmations, and especially hearing your discussion about the hope that you have in the next generation, that we're able, especially as Gen Z, to unlearn a lot of cycles of trauma and be there in community to support one another. In the psychology field, we have this new terminology for 18 to, I think it's about 24-year-olds of emerging adulthood. So I was wondering, for those of us in that demographic, what recommendations do you have with being emerging adults and trying to figure out our ways in professional careers, specifically in the entertainment industry? Because you were a dancer, and we know a lot of the reports that are coming out about young women, especially, who are being attacked. What advice do you have for emerging adults in entertainment or any field to just prepare for that transition?
I love that you asked that so that it could be helpful to young emerging adults, but they're not the ones that need to change. It's everyone else. And so I don't feel like you guys need that advice. It's literally every other adult that is taking on the responsibility of how they approach you. You know, one of the things that was so heartbreaking to me when I was speaking to an incredibly intelligent young advocate, Ray Epstein, and I said to her at one point, so what do how would you feel at 18 if you had an app like this? And we were just having a really good discussion. And she was like, Jessica, at 18, I didn't think I could ask a question. I think I felt like at 18, I was supposed to know all the answers to things. I thought I was like you magically jump over this line of 18 years old and you have to know all the answers to all the questions. And so asking questions felt like you were incompetent. And so what I would say to everyone outside of the 18 to 24-year-old age range is let young emerging adults ask questions. Answer them kindly and generously, because that is also stopping young people from asking for help when they need it in a crisis situation, because they're feeling like a burden. And so I don't think you have to do a single freaking thing. It's everyone else.
Jess, I'm honestly at a loss for words. That was so powerful and so affirming in ways that I'm sure you understand. I'm sure you understand.
I just love your generation so much because you are so willing to learn. You're so willing to be there for other people. And I'm not seeing adults step up and be that way for you and the years that you really need it.
Yes, thank you. I'm also very much hoping for that shift that we see, especially with everything going on. And with this in mind, I know you've mentioned so many amazing ways that we can show up for one another, specifically for survivors, through your app, through community, through just being a listening ear. But for students, parents, educators, or community members, what's another meaningful way, like if you had to just take it all home now, what's a meaningful way that we can all show up for survivors to create those safer spaces?
That's a great question. If I could have people respond to me the way I would have hoped that they would, is don't wait for me to ask for help. Don't leave it on me to let you know that I need support. You're not going to upset a survivor by showing up with pizza one night and saying, I know you've been struggling. Here's your favorite pizza. Let's sit down and watch your favorite show. And I want to snuggle on the couch in a nice, cozy blanket. You're not going to upset someone that is disclosed that they just went through something like that by showing up and saying, hey, it's a beautiful day outside. Can we go for a walk? You don't need the details of what happened to show up for someone. And so just like if someone went through a car accident, every time you saw them, you wouldn't need to bring up the car accident to show up for them. You would just notice that they're laying on the couch with a cast on their leg. But the difference is because the injury is invisible, we don't show up for people. So I would beg supporters, start looking for ways to show up that have nothing to do with asking for details or waiting to be asked.
That's such great advice, especially since, rehashing details can be so re-traumatizing, and it's something that a lot of survivors are forced to do over and over again if they choose to report or if they go through like narrative therapy processes, and then if they have a dream cycle or an imagination. So we're forced to relive this all the time. But that is such great advice to show up. And I love what you said, and I want to emphasize what you said earlier too about creating communities of care, and not just around crisis. I think it's so important that we create communities of care before the crisis and then long after the crisis. So thank you for imparting that wisdom on us. And I know that this conversation has been not the lightest in the world. It's always like heavy and hard to talk about, some of the scourges of our culture and our world that is sexual violence and rape culture. But is there anything going on right now that gives you hope in this work or in the world at large? A bright ray of sunshine that is sort of helping you go forward day to day.
I'm actually really hopeful when I'm able to sit with lovely young women like you and have these conversations, these really thoughtful conversations, not for a soundbite, not for a headline, but to be able to have these conversations because it takes all of us building the resilience and the language, a safe environment for us to get past the stigma. So it's moments like these that give me hope. And honestly, seeing people on all sides of the political spectrum say, yeah, child sex trafficking is really bad.
It really should be a nonpartisan issue.
That might be the line we're not willing to cross. There's this tiny bit of hope with that Americans will hold people of power to accountability for this. There is that hope that in the long run, as a culture, we can believe in all of our crazy ideas and individuality and pursuits of our dreams and happiness. And this is a line we will not cross as humans. And I am hoping that everybody listening, if you haven't gotten on board with join us, join that fight with us, that we all believe this is bad and that this administration needs to do the right thing, to showcase that they are not going to let something like this happen again. That I don't have so much hope on, but everything else I do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I hope on that or not.
That's the message, right? Join us.
That's the
Join
message.
us. Join us.
Join us.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a political thing. We want people to be safe. We want people to be respected 100%.
Yes.
So
that's exactly, you just said it. It should not be a political thing that we don't want women and children sexually assaulted. Like that should not be a political act.
100%.
It shouldn't run the political side of any one party. All of us should be okay with that.
Yeah, definitely. So, wow, I feel like I could just keep talking, for many more hours. And I think it'd be
Me
great
too.
just to have you back on once the app is live and we're
Yes,
rolling it out. And so we can update people
definitely.
about your progress with it and the impact that I
Thank
know it's
you.
going to have. But we love to close by asking our guests to complete a statement that Chessy shared with the world nearly 10 years ago. I have the right to. How would you complete that sentence and what does it mean to you?
Mm. I have the right to heal so that I never have to carry that burden around with me and give my power away for another fraction of a second to that man.
Thank you. That was powerful. We have one final question for you. For those who are excited about the With You Too app, can you share how we can stay up to date on the progress and where we can learn what's coming next?
Yes, we would be so grateful. My team and I would be so grateful if you would follow us on Instagram. We have an Instagram account just for the app, and it's at With You Too app. So if everybody would follow us there, we would love it. We will keep you up to date. You can also follow me on my advocacy journey as the founder and CEO at Jess Michaels Speaks. But we really are hoping everybody will start to find us on the app. The other thing I would love people to do is in that bio, they can learn. They can take this support style superpower quiz to find out how they best support people. It's a really great little BuzzFeed style quiz where you can learn about yourself and find out what your skills are in supporting other people. Because the biggest mistake that I see about people in thinking they're supposed to, be there for other people is they think they're supposed to do everything. And we actually have our own individual skills, right? And I tend to be someone that actually brings like humor to an uncomfortable moment. I'm one that does that, and so I'm not always the first person to rush in for comfort. I'm the person that lightens the mood, right? And we all have those special skills. That's where I gravitate towards. And everybody is unique. And so you can take this support style superpower quiz, and that will put you on our newsletter to keep you up to date. But we'll also be updating our Instagram. And when you sign up, you also get like really inspiring text messages from my team.
The quiz is so much fun. I recommend everybody to take it. I know our whole team took it and shared what our support superpower was. And I don't think any of us were surprised which one each person was, too, which is, a fun part of it for sure. Jess,
Definitely.
you are a powerhouse. You've such a big heart. And I know that you're going to continue making such a big impact in this world. And I'm so grateful that I get to know you and get to work with you and get to watch your journey.
Same.
Thank you so much for your time today and even more for your courage in using your voice to drive change.
Thank you for having me.
And Jess, you've really reminded us how much survivors' voices matter and that our experiences deserve to be heard and amplified, and that our voices should shape how the public and media understand sexual harm, not just be a part of the headline or a media frenzy.
And hearing your story, your journey, and the work you're doing with You Too is truly inspiring, and it gives us all hope and shows us the power of speaking up and taking action.
Thank you for leading with bravery and reminding us why this work is so important.
And thank you for giving survivors everywhere a voice and a path towards healing and justice.
To everyone listening, we hope this conversation inspires you to listen, learn, and show up for the survivors in your life.
And remember, you have the right to. Thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends about Aspire, the I Have the Right To podcast. Visit IHaveTheRightTo.org to learn more about our programming for students, educators, and parents, as well as internship opportunities. And don't forget to follow us on social media at I Have the Right To. Until next time, stay empowered and keep the conversations going.